right, good afternoon, you guys. So good to be here with you. It is always a privilege to be with Hope family here. This is the first time this is being used, I think. Is that right? So I hope I look really great. I am very excited to be with you guys. It is always, always, always a privilege to be back here. And our family is in the middle. We're actually 6 weeks into a 10-week trip. And on Friday, we got back to Maryland, and it feels so good to know that for the month of December, primarily we'll be here. My wife and I are headed to Anna, who you know are headed to New York this coming weekend with another church, but otherwise we will be in town. So I'm looking forward to connecting with a lot of you. The last 6 weeks have been all over the place. We're in California, I was in Arizona, Saudi Arabia, Colorado Springs, Denver, Oklahoma City, and just involved in a lot of different things to do with ministry. And so this month, it's really great to kind of settle. I'm going to pray for us quickly. We're going to talk about purity and hope. I will tell you guys this. I've never, it'll be 20 years in April that I've been involved in ministry, which is insane. My cousin, this is totally random, but my cousin got his law degree and then joined the Air Force. He's a little bit older than me, but in 2025, next year, he just got based in Oahu. So he came over to Big Island to have dinner with us, and he's trying to decide what to do next year because he can retire. I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, 20 years in the military, you can just retire. And I was like, wow, that's nice. I'm 20 years next year in ministry, but have no plans of retiring. So, okay, great. I'm going to pray for us. I will tell you guys this. I've never, I think, been in my 20 years, had a word that has been so long-standing and just always highlights when I come back to a community or to this house. So I'm kind of building this message around a word that I had while here in 2019. I'll remind you guys of that word. I've probably shared it now multiple times here. And then we're going to talk a little bit about purity and about hope, and then call it good for the day. Sound good? Lord, we just thank you that you are with us, that you are in our midst. I just ask your blessing and your presence over Hope Church, over this family, over this house, and the community that's been formed over years and years in this place. So Lord, would your presence just lead us today and every day. In Jesus' name, amen. Alrighty. So I'm going to remind you guys of this word. For those of you who've been around when I've come through, I've shared this now numerous times. I felt the Lord spoke to me this word for Hope Church in 2019 on New Year's, and it stuck with me throughout these 5-6 years now. And so I'm going to read it for you guys. It may not be too unfamiliar, but I felt like the Lord said, and it's gone broader than just to Hope Church, but I think very specifically this is where the Lord spoke to me about it, and I really believe that God has significant things for this church and for the generations to come out of this church. So I'll read it for you guys. It says here, this word is for 2019. It says, always be prepared for his purposes through disciplined prayer, purity, and fighting to stay encouraged. Okay, so this is 2019, but what I had said, what I wrote here was I believe this year, which was 2019, we're going to see a door beginning to open for the gospel like has never been seen in our lifetime. It will continue to open more and more through the first half of the 2020s, and it will be accompanied by historic world events. Really exciting things, and probably some scary things as well. But they will shape the course of this century. I believe our children and their children will look at the last quarter of the first quarter of this century, which I know is that's just how it came out. But the last quarter of the first quarter being up to 2025 next year, right? The last quarter of it being the 5-6 years. 2019 at New Year's is when I had this word. The last quarter of the first quarter being 2019 until 2025, just so we're clear on that, okay? Which we are stepping into. It'll be easy for them, our children and their children after them, it will be easy for them to see that these years set in action the many unfolding events of the 21st century. And I believe this is the year that we're going to go, that we'll go from seeing light in the crack of the door to the door truly beginning to open. So what do? Always be prepared for his purposes through disciplined prayer, disciplined purity, and fighting to stay encouraged. And these were the scriptures that I really had when I had this. Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. And the second verse was 1 Timothy 4, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with complete patience and teaching. Okay, I know that the world is very good at telling us all of the bad things. We hear a lot about it. I don't need to get into many of the bad things or scary things that we see happening today because the news does an excellent job of reminding us of all the scary things, how we tiptoe closer and closer toward nuclear obliteration and wars and rumors of wars and political upheaval and economic issues, and they're so good at telling us all of the bad things. But they're not quite so good at reminding us of the good things, the things of the kingdom, the things that God's actually doing in the world. And I just want to give you guys just a little bit of those because we do have reason for great hope. We have reason for great hope in our time today, like in the time we live in. We also have an ultimate hope that will not disappoint us, which is eternity with God. It is not a happy thought or a cloudy idea. It is a reality that is ours because of the finished work of Jesus on the cross. Amen? I tell you what, that is very, very hopeful when we run into challenges, trials, suffering in this life. So the world doesn't really know how to package the light that is piercing through the darkness. And so we miss it a lot of times. But I'll just tell you guys, we have reason for great hope, and that hope will not disappoint us. There was a study done. Have you guys heard of this study? It's actually quite disturbing. It was done in the 50s by a guy named Kurt Richter. He actually worked at Johns Hopkins. He was a psychology professor. And he did an experiment drowning rats. Anyone heard of it? It's like a very famous experiment where he drowned a whole bunch of rats. And it's a little disturbing, but I'm going to share with you guys briefly. Essentially, the part of the experiment that is pertinent to us is that he took wild rats they captured who are known for being good swimmers and are kind of pretty ferocious. And he put them in glass jars full of water to see how long they would swim. All 34 rats drowned within a few minutes. Like 15 minutes was which is horrible, I know. That's just awful. He just drowned rat after rat, right? Well, then he did this. He took another 34 similar rats and he put them in water, which they began to do the same thing, only this time, right before they actually drowned. He removed them from the water, dried them, helped them recover, and revived them, and then put them back in the glass water, which is just, I know, it's just awful. But do you know how long they lasted? 40 to 80 hours swimming. That's more than 3 days. All the 34 before drowned within 15 minutes. What did he do? Or how did he train, what changed with these other rats? He introduced hope. They thought, if I just go a little longer, something will come in and save me. which I know is absolutely horrible when you look at that because he drowned all the rats again. And when you think about a little rat swimming for 3 days, you're like, that is just awful, right? And then it drowned anyways. But the reason this is important for us, especially when you look at Scripture, right? It says hope deferred makes the heart sick, right? Like the rats are dead, and if you think about it too long, your heart will get sick with like, oh, that is just an awful experiment, right? But the reason this is the thing that I want to give us, what's important for us is that we are not those rats, and our hope will not let us down. It won't put us to shame. It won't disappoint us like those rats were disappointed. But you guys, we must have that hope. It must be something that we've cultivated in our lives so that we remain encouraged throughout difficult times. Our hope is much better, right? We're not going to struggle for 3 days and then drown anyways. But that doesn't change the fact that if we give up, like the first 34 rats, it's not good. Look at this. Romans 5, verses 3 through 5. This is the NLT. I usually have the ESV, but this one just says it so much more clearly, I feel. We can rejoice, too, when we run into troubles and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance, the ability to keep going. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. And this hope will not lead to disappointment, for we know how dearly God loves us because he has given us the Holy Spirit to fill our hearts with his love. How do I go back here? Okay. The reality is this, you guys. Our hope will not disappoint, and we have great reason to hope. Okay? And what we're going to talk about today is a concept of purity that, really was developed in me through this word that I had for you guys, because this whole thing of disciplined prayer, purity, and fighting to stay encouraged has been something that I have experienced the need for in my life, but I've also recognized that my view of purity has been so narrow. Within the church, pretty much all I was taught was like moral purity, or really like sexual purity. That's the only thing I knew about purity, but that's not what it's about at all. I mean, it is, but it's a very small piece of what purity means. Pure gold literally just means it's only gold. There's no other contaminants in it. It's pure. It's one thing. Something that is pure is one thing. Pure water is H2O. No other minerals, nothing. Okay? Does that? Are you with me? Like that is what we're talking about when I talk about purity here. So, but I want to give us, a couple of things just that today, like what hope. What hope do we have right now? What is God doing around the world? Do any of you know, I don't know if you read this just now because I clicked it too far fast here, but does anyone know what the biggest city in the world is today? Population? Yeah. Tokyo, that's absolutely right. Okay, good job. I wish I had a candy to throw at you or something. Okay, I'm going to throw this up here. I think or anyone else know other big cities? Because I think it's all going to pop up. Some of my, it's messed up. Yeah, other big cities. Beijing, yep. Beijing is going to be, I only have the 7 top, and it's just below 7. Number 7. Any other big cities that you guys know of in the world today? Top 7 I'm looking for. Delhi, yep. Delhi's going to be on there. Anyone else? Yeah. What? New York is actually quite a ways down population-wise. It could be one of our biggest in the U.S., but global cities are going to be quite a bit more populated. Let me just throw some of these up here. Yeah, so they're supposed to come up one at a time, but the top 7 today: Tokyo, Delhi, India, Shanghai, Dhaka, Bangladesh, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Cairo. That one surprised me, and Mexico City. Kind of cool, right? Well, what I want you guys to realize here, it's kind of spread out all over the place. If you look at A couple of these, especially like Tokyo, is the fastest decreasing population on the planet today, which will quickly be surpassed by South Korea. South Korea has the lowest birth rate on Earth right now, but Tokyo is a bit older. They're dying 2 to 1 a day right now. 2 to 1 being born. Their population will be half in one generation without some sort of change. But what I want to show you guys is the column here on the left that you're looking at is today's biggest cities. In 2100, like in 75 years, right now, if things continue the way that they're going, these cities will be the largest in the world. Lagos, Nigeria is on target to be 88 million people in 75 years. The largest city on the planet. What I want you to notice is that we go from where we are today, which includes East Asia, more central, like you've got China, you've got India, you've got Bangladesh, then you have South America, you have North Africa, and you have North America. In 75 years, the top 7 cities, biggest cities, are going to be Africa and Asia, and Africa holds 5 of the 7. Sub-Saharan Africa, 4 of them, the top 3, all Sub-Saharan Africa. The thing that's interesting about that is that God has been doing a wild and radical work across Sub-Saharan Africa. And you will see, though there is great need for teaching and discipleship, you will see the gospel all across Sub-Saharan Africa. And they are going to be stepping into places of greater influence, greater authority, greater power in the world for various reasons, but one of them being that they will simply be the largest in the world. While many Western nations, and we just talked about some of the leading Asian nations, are actually starting to shrink, you have all of these kind of quiet powerhouses that are growing, and God has been really working in these places in a profound way. He is on the move, and I'll tell you this, he's the God of generations. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He looks at long periods of time and starts implementing things that we will see the fruit of. Our children and our children's children will see the fruit of. He is greatly at work today. I just wanted to show you guys this. I got this photo from a buddy last week. This is literally last week. This is New Zealand. This is an event called the Send. Are you guys familiar with that? Have you guys heard of the Send? It's something that some YWAMers started putting together, and they're running these large events. But the idea is not just come together. The idea is it is a call to action. We are not just gathering you. You're coming here to be sent to your high schools, your universities, your cities, to the marginalized, and to the nations. New Zealand only has 5.2 million people in the whole country. And all of these people chose to come to be activated and sent for kingdom work. I was so encouraged when I got this text a week ago. I was sent to our leadership team WhatsApp group, and I just looked at it, and they gave some of the stats of like what's happening here, and I was just like, man, that is amazing. A tiny little nation out in the South Pacific just bringing all these people together to be sent. It's really incredible. I just got back, I said this a couple weeks ago, I just got back from Saudi Arabia. I was teaching in one of the first discipleship schools that we've run in YWAM in a city called Jeddah, which is about an hour drive from Mecca, which is, the holiest place for Muslims. And when I went out there, I went to teach in a discipleship school for a week, and I was absolutely blown away with how open Saudi Arabia is and how many workers are going there right now. When I say workers, I mean gospel workers. It's okay to talk freely here. They're missionaries. Missionaries are being sent by the droves into a place when I was a kid, you couldn't even dream of going. Like, I couldn't even get in as an American. Now, I literally went without a visa. I literally showed up. I actually tried to do it online, and I got denied, and I was, like, freaked out for a minute, and I was like, oh, man, do they know my history? Do they, because you fill out this whole form that says you won't do religious things, and I'm like, okay. And then, and then they're like, you got denied. And so then I called the consulate in D.C., and they said, oh, yeah, no problem. Just go. You'll get one on arrival. And I said, but I got denied. He goes, yeah, it was probably just an error. Just go. And I was like, what's your name? He goes, my name's Matthew. And I'm like, do you really know Matthew? Because, I don't know if you travel or not, but, like, I don't want to get there and get in trouble for some reason, So I just showed up, and nobody knows what to do with me. You don't have your visa? I'm like, no, I don't have my visa. And it's, like, very developed, right? Like, they have a lot of wealth. And so the guy goes, we just got to go back to this kiosk. So this guy in a full, like, white Islamic garb and the hat, he takes me to the kiosk, and he goes, give me your passport. And he takes it, and he puts in the passport number and name and my date of birth. No other information was even correct. He's just like, ABBYY, enter, address. And I'm like, is that going to be a problem? He goes, meh. I was like, oh, that's great. Now they have none of my information. That's even better. I was like, but I couldn't believe it, that I could be there in a place where the airplane getting there, I took Saudia Airlines, which is a great airline. It's part of the Delta family, Sky Team, right? It's a great airline. And I'm going to the back to find the bathroom. They have a mosque in the plane with a TV screen that has a compass on it, so that you can always face toward Mecca while you're praying. Like, I was like, this is deeply ingrained. I've never been on an airplane that has a mosque on it. There's guys in there praying in the air because it's a long flight. And I just thought, man, what an opportunity we have to go and be and work in a place where before we couldn't even get into. Doors are opening all over the world. I came back, and a week later, I went to Oklahoma City, where the founders of Hobby Lobby, their headquarters are in Oklahoma City. You guys know Hobby Lobby? That family helped fund, they were the primary funders for the Bible Museum in Washington, D.C. But I went there to talk with some different business people about, like, kingdom stuff. And I learned that David Green is the CEO and founder of Hobby Lobby. He's, like, in his early 80s, still the CEO. They are giving $2.2 million a day to Great Commission work. He's considered the greatest giver toward the Great Commission alive today. He's given billions toward Great Commission projects globally. There is so much that is happening. I'll give you just one more thing that's happening that I'm looking at and going, oh wow, it's not just bad. There's a lot of opportunity here that I think the church can realize. And I'm not going to go too long on it, but I'll just talk to you about AI technology. I have a buddy, he actually went with me to Oklahoma City, but he works with Google in Silicon Valley. And so he and I flew into Oklahoma City. He flew from California, I flew from here. We met up there and we're doing this. But his buddies are the ones that run Gemini, which is Google's AI. And I'm literally I'm not trying to use AI, I'm just Google searching for scripture references. I'm cross-referencing passages in Matthew to the Old Testament because there's all these fulfilled prophecies in Matthew, and I was teaching on that in Colorado Springs. So I'm literally looking them up, and Gemini is the first thing that's popping up because it's Google's search engine now, right? Like, it's using AI. And so I look up the references that Gemini is giving me. They don't even exist. So I'm like, why? I'm like, I can't find it. It doesn't. And then I realize, oh, AI is wrong. And I turn to my buddy. I go, bro, Gemini is whack. Like, it doesn't even, look at all these references it's giving me. They don't even exist. I'm like showing him in the Bible. He's like, that's not good. He's literally messaging his guys that run Gemini, and he just looks at me and goes, I just wouldn't use it. And I was like, yeah, this is the dumbest AI I've ever seen. It's like artificial, not intelligent. It's like, can't even just look up a scripture, you know what I mean? But I will say this, I have other friends who are in the AI tech side of things. And what AI is becoming capable of just in the last few years is absolutely astounding, what it's capable of doing. But I'll tell you guys this, AI, because of AI, so it's 2025 AD, just about, which means the time of Jesus was 2,000 years ago plus, okay, or right around there. We're all on the same page. I'm not going to get into it. That's our dating system. In 2,000 years, we have seen a lot of forward movement for the gospel, for the kingdom. But I'll tell you this, in the next 50 to 100 years, because of AI, we're going to see the Bible translated into more languages and distributed to more people than we've seen in the last 2,000 years combined. I'll tell you guys this. Too often, this is not what I want to preach on today, but too often the church is late to the party. It's late to the party. Okay, like I wonder when I look at this word from 2019, I wonder if a big part of it is actually going to be AI. That our kids are going to look back and they're going to go, oh, November of 2022, ChatGPT gets leaked to the World Wide Web. And then it is a complete tech race. Like my buddy at Google is like, oh my gosh, Google completely blew it. We weren't just not first, we were like way behind everyone else. And now there's AI bots everywhere online. Like everybody's got their AI thing going on. But here's the thing, guys, is AI by itself is neither good nor bad. The church doesn't know what to do oftentimes with these new texts. They're like, what do we do? How do we move forward? You look at, like, if you look at history, there's the Gutenberg press was created by Johannes Gutenberg, and he's credited to doing that in like 1436, okay, the 15th century. You look today, not at religious or Christian think tanks or historians, and they would put, if you just Google top 10 inventions in the West, period, the printing press is in the top 10 of all of them. Gutenberg's printing press, and they would say one of the most profound events, non-believers, is shortly after it was created, Gutenberg started printing the Bible, and it changed the West. Did you know that the church, when they realized what was happening with the printing press, the church started murdering Christians who were printing? That was their response to it, Like, that's why Wycliffe he was martyred for translating the Bible and having it printed. You go forward to the internet, April of 1993 is when www went public worldwide, right? There was web before that, but that was like the true launching of it on a global scale. Church has no idea really what to do with it in the 90s. We're like, what do we do with this thing? We're not sure. Pretty much we feel like what does it do? It's dangerous and just produces and multiplies bad things and gets people addicted to screens and porn and dopamine-rich entertainment, and we don't know what to do with it. And so what happens, we're so late to the party, the world and the enemy totally use it for their purposes instead of kingdom purposes. Today, I'm seeing this all over in the church. No one knows what to do with AI. They're like, I'm so scared. Don't let it do this. We don't know what we're getting into. Don't let it help you prep your sermons. Right? But I'm telling you guys this. AI will be the leading tool, mark my words, it will be the leading tool in solving the language gaps globally in the next decades. That alone is going to carry immense amounts of power. Not to mention all the other things that it's going to be doing. But we don't know what to do, and so we just kind of freeze, and we're like, I don't know, I guess we let someone else figure it out. The problem is, if the world figures it out, it's going to be for worldly things or the enemy's things, and The church should be the ones leading and guiding. Just remember this, okay? This is not my message, but just remember this. Religion is rigid and doesn't like change, but our God, the God that we follow, is the God of life and newness, and dare I say, even development. That is why we started in Genesis 1 and 2 in a garden, and we're moving to Revelation 21 and 22, which is an elaborate futuristic city. That requires development. So we don't, if we have issues, we need to quickly sort them out so that we can help lead the way forward. It is here. Things like AI tech, it is here. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to get bigger and better and stronger and faster and scarier. And putting our head in the sand is not the answer. It's not the answer. And I promise you this, AI technology is not going to destroy our faith any more than when we discovered the earth was actually not the center of our galaxy. They thought that was going to destroy our faith. Or that the common person can actually own and read the Bible themselves without the help of some religious scholars. They thought that was going to ruin our faith. Or the discovery of nuclear power. They thought that was going to ruin everything. Or any other silly thing that religion has bulked against and tried to hinder or hide from. It's not going to destroy our faith, but to close our eyes and pretend it's not there. And I'm not just talking about AI, guys. I'm talking about this bigger sense of like, we are moving forward and the church is called to lead the way. That should be our very calling, because we know the guy who created everything that's here and who made us in his image as creative beings. Amen? All right, that's not what we're talking about, though. So let me move forward. We're going to make this quick. I want to talk to you guys about... Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about. I thought I had a different one up here, but that's okay. We're talking about purity, and we're going to talk about hope. Okay, because this is our hope. Okay, this is a huge, huge, huge element of our hope. Our hope. Revelation 21, 1 through 4. It says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw a holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away.'" Guys, this is not a happy, concept. This is your future. This is our reality. We are going to live with God forever in eternity. And there will be no more mourning or crying or pain. Former things will have passed away. There is an immense amount of hope in this, and that should keep us encouraged, whether we struggle or have trials today or not. I think these ideas of purity invites the presence of God. It attracts the presence of God. And I think that's not too difficult to kind of connect the dots on that. As we are, like I said, purity is about one thing. If we are about one thing and that one thing is Jesus, that attracts the presence of God. That's not too difficult to right? Is that okay? All right. In addition, I think the idea of hope and this concept of eternity, of resurrection, of the fact that though in this life we die, one day we will live forevermore. Those concepts are easily put together, right? Hope and resurrection. That is a reality. I just turned 38 on Thanksgiving. I was in Denver with a house church network that my wife and I have been a part of. And on Thanksgiving morning, they do a turkey bowl football flag football. And of course I went and I played. I am still sore today. Like I don't know what's wrong. My hip flexors are sore. I think it's because I was trying to run on the snow. It was literally, the fields were covered in snow. And it's flag football. And I'm like, dang, 10 years ago, this would not have been like this. Right? I'm getting older. We're breaking down. There is real challenge. There is real struggle in our lives. But we have a hope that you will be given, I will be given a new body that doesn't do this. And it will live forever. It's not just a happy idea. It is real. And it should give us great encouragement. It should help us fight to stay encouraged. Are you with me? But here's the connection, the ideas that I want to try and bring together, which may not be quite so obvious. And it's the idea of purity and this idea of hope or of resurrection. Okay? And they actually fit together really beautifully. And there's a book, if any of you like reading really chewy, heavy stuff. This is an amazing book. I'm not finished with it yet, but it's called Jesus and the Forces of Death. It's written by a theologian, this guy Matthew Thiessen. He's a relatively young guy, but really, really brilliant. And essentially what he does is he talks about this idea of Old Testament Jewish understanding. And you got to understand this. We're not going to take too long. Don't worry. But he talks about this idea that in the Old Testament, there were various forms of purity that they understood. You and I today, oftentimes in the church, we only look at number 2, moral purity. And then really we look at that and mostly we just boil that down to sexual purity, or at least that was my experience growing up. And that's pretty much what we think of as purity when it comes to purity. And it's kind of up to us. Like, we have to really fight for this whole idea. But in the Old Testament, and understand Jesus lived in the Old Testament, okay, until he died and rose back from the dead, instituting the new covenant, he lived in the Old Testament, okay? So he was an Old Testament Jewish man. Now, these are the 4 kinds of purity that would be talked about in the Old Testament that Jesus lived in, okay? Ritual purity, moral purity, genealogical purity, and then food and table purity, which really is part of ritual purity, but it's such a big category, we put it all by itself here, okay? So the idea would be ritual purity was that the Jews, and you'll read about this in the Old Testament, they had to do all kinds of crazy stuff to be able to go into the presence of God. That was the idea. You want to be pure so you can be in the presence of God. Purity attracts the presence of God, right? So ritual purity was they had to wash their hands, or they washed dishes or plates. They did ceremonial cleansing things before going into the temple, and they did not get close to or interact with impure or unclean things before going to do things with or for God, because then you're unclean or impure. Are you with me? So moral purity, we're very familiar with that. That's something we look at today very normally. Genealogical purity we're not going to talk about, but it was literally keeping they were Jewish people, and they didn't intermix or marry with non-Jewish people, okay? That's not entirely true, but they really fought for that, to stay as a pure breed, all right, that God was going to use. So you understand when the northern kingdom gets defeated and taken away, they're forced to intermarry, and then when they come back later, they're known as Samaritans because Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom. Samaritans, they would be considered by the Jews, which was the southern kingdom, Samaritan dogs, because they're now half-breeds. They've intermarried and mixed, and they are no longer purebred Israelites. Does that make sense? So this was very important to them. And then food and table purity goes under ritual purity, but that has to do with how they wash and clean and what they do, okay? Now, what I want to really, for us to focus on here is that there were 3 things in the Old Testament that really made people impure or unclean, more than like anything else. You'll see this all the time if you're looking for it in the Old Testament, okay? 3 things that made them unclean. All of them have to do with life and death, okay? So something that would make a person unclean and incapable of interacting with their own people and going to the temple would be leprosy. Leprosy was the appearance on the skin of death. If it was actual literal leprosy, then it would be the death of your nerves. You can't feel anything. Does that make sense? Or leprosy, these rashes oftentimes would be white and flaky, and it was the appearance of death. And that made a person unclean. In fact, so much so that if they couldn't get it dealt with, they would have to tell people coming their direction, unclean, unclean. You know what I mean? Like pretty much everywhere you would go, you'd be like, I got a rash. I have a rash. It's like very shameful. You know what I mean? Like it was this idea of, oh, we can't be near you, and you can't go to the temple and be in the presence of God. Okay? The second thing that would make someone unclean, you see this a lot, is menstrual blood or the emission of semen. This is things that create life but are not realized. Does that make sense? Our God is a God of life. The appearance of death, leprosy, this was the elements that create life but were unrealized. There was a potential for life that was not fulfilled. It made you unclean. And then the third thing, which was the cardinal thing, was literally death. Now, I want you to understand this. None of those three things by themselves make you sinful. They just made you unclean and unable to be in the presence of God. If you had a relative that died, someone had to take care of that dead body. That was the right thing to do. And they did that all the time. But it still made you unclean and unable to go into the presence of God because he is the God of life. Are you with me? All of those things. Now, to move us along here quickly, because we're still doing communion today, what I want us to understand is that these things did not necessarily mean that you sinned. They were not moral purity things. Moral purity has to do with sin. These were ritual purity things, helping people understand there's a much greater reality to this life than just you sin or you don't sin. There was this idea of our God is the God of life, and some of these things, like normal cycles that happen, made you unclean. It didn't make you sinful. God created that cycle. It didn't make you sinful, but it made you unclean to go into the presence of God, the God of life. Are you with me? It's not your fault necessarily, usually, if you have leprosy, but it makes you unclean. Okay? Now, I want us to look at, in this context, we're going to look at a couple of stories, and then we're going to call it good. I'm going to give you an application, and we're going to call it good, okay? First story is the story of the Good Samaritan. So what's happening, to make this quick, is there's a lawyer. He comes to Jesus. He says, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Which, quite literally, is the dream. If you're a missionary or a pastor or a worker, and someone walks up to you and goes, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" That is the best question. I'd be like, "Well, my child, let me introduce you, Repeat this prayer after me." Jesus doesn't quite do that. He never makes it easy on people. He asks him, what's written in the law? How do you read it? He says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus says, "You've answered correctly. Do this and you'll live." And then he wants to justify himself, the lawyer, and so he says, "Well, who is my neighbor?" Very interesting question. Who is my neighbor? And Jesus launches into a story. And he says, okay, there's a man. He's going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. So he's a Jewish man. He's going from Jerusalem, the capital of southern kingdom, down to Jericho. And he falls upon some robbers come after him. And they beat him, they strip him, they rob him, and they leave him in the ditch dead. Leaving him half dead. Do you see that? That's a key term right there, okay? Then it says, by chance, a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Why did he not want to be on the same side of the road? What's the priest's job? To do things in the temple, he's going somewhere. He's headed to Jericho to do work, probably. And he's on his way, and this guy's half dead. Now, the problem is, if you go over there and that man ends up whole dead, what happens to the priest? He's unclean. Can't do his work for like a week. So he's like, shoot, forget it. And he just walks by. And then it says, likewise, a Levite. The job of the Levites was work in the temple, offer the sacrifices. They must be clean. So what does he do? He passes by, leaving this guy dying. And then who is it that comes along? Pass by on the other side. Verse 33, but a Samaritan, or you and I could call him a half-breed Samaritan dog, comes by. As he journeyed, he came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him, bound up his wounds. He touched him, poured oil on him. He did all these things. He set him on his own animal and took him to an inn where he could be cared for, gave the innkeeper money. And Jesus says to him, which of these three proved to be the man's neighbor? He said, the one who showed mercy. And Jesus said, you go and do likewise. I think it's very interesting that Jesus is looking at this and he's going, you're getting caught up on these ideas of like clean and unclean, but I actually have weightier elements of the law I want you to focus on. Right? Check this out. This story is crazy story. So the story from Matthew 9 about the woman with the issue of blood and the dead girl, right? It says this, it says, when he was saying these things to them, behold, a ruler came in and knelt before him, saying, my daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her. You see what he's asking? Jesus is a rabbi. He's a teacher. He's like, you serious? You want me to come over there? You just told me your daughter is dead, and you want me to come touch her? It's not an appropriate question. It's not nice. It's not like Jesus is like, oh my gosh, do you know what that'll mean? I got to go out of the camp for a week. I have to do all these ceremonies and washings and It says immediately, my daughter's died, lay your hand on her and she will live. And Jesus rose and followed him. He's like, let's go. I like this. Now, with his disciples, he's on his way, and behold, a woman who had suffered from a discharge of blood for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. For she said to herself, if I only touch his garment, I will be made well. Now, in Luke, we're not reading it because it's a much longer story, but in Luke, she touches him in the midst of a crowd without asking. And because of her issue, she is what? Unclean. And when she touches a rabbi, she makes him unclean. Except when it comes to Jesus, when he gets touched, literally in Luke, he's like, who touched me? I felt power go out. And Peter's like, dude, there's a crowd pushing on you. Everyone's touching you. He goes, no. Who touched me? And she realized that she came forward trembling. Why? Because she should not have touched him. She should not have been in the crowd. She was unclean. And she should be chastised for it, at least. So she comes up, falls at his feet. And Jesus says, behold, Jesus turned, seeing her, he said, take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well. And instantly the woman was made well. This is what I want you, then he goes from here. He's headed to an unclean situation, dead girl. And on the way, he runs into an unclean situation. Now, if it was any other rabbi, he would have told the leader, sorry, I can't go with you anymore. She just made me unclean. I can't go do ministry for her, for the dead girl. But he just keeps going. Why? Because instead of when Jesus touches something unclean, instead of him becoming unclean, he literally destroys the cause of what created the uncleanness. So he's not made unclean. She's made well. She's made clean. Then he goes to the dead girl, and when Jesus came to the ruler's house, saw the flute players and crowds making a commotion, meaning it's a mourning process. He said, go away. The girl is not dead, but sleeping, right? He just arrived. They know she's dead. And he goes, she's not dead. And they laughed at him. Like, this is a weird scenario. They're trying to start a mourning process. And Jesus is like, hey, hold up. She's not dead. She's asleep. And they're like, you're crazy. She's dead, right? And so he kicks them all out. And then he goes in. But when the crowd had been put outside, he tells the ruler, you want some help? Get these people out. This is not a funeral procession. They leave. He went in and took her by the hand. He touched her, the dead girl. But instead of him being unclean, the girl arose, and the report of this went throughout all that district. I'm going to say it again. When Jesus comes on the scene, what would have made us unclean by touching, Jesus eradicates the very cause of what made things unclean. He reverses it. Now, here's the last thing that we're going to look at here and then have a tiny little application. We're going to call it good, okay? So are you guys okay? Here's the reality. Jesus touches anything that he goes up to that is unclean, and he makes it clean. This is very simply what I want to just give you. In Matthew 27, they have a weird zombie story. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I always skip over it because I don't know what to do with it. But it says this: Jesus has just been crucified, right? So what does he do? What's the cardinal thing that makes you unclean? Death. If you touch death, you're unclean the longest amount of time. Like you can't, when Jesus touches death, bang, they come back from the dead. But what happens when Jesus steps into death himself? It should trap you. It traps everyone. Except Jesus, when he steps into death, this is what happens. Matthew 27, and behold, the curtain of the temple was torn. Jesus has just died on the cross. The sun goes dark, the earth shakes. The curtain that separates the Holy of Holies from the rest of the world torn in two from top to bottom. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook and the rocks were split. Look at this. And the tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. What? Like who? Abraham? Or like Lazarus again? He's like, you keep bringing me back. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is wild. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. Can you imagine the people that fell asleep, that died in faith in God? Literally, Jesus steps into death, and instead of it making him unclean or it capturing him, boof, it's like a power surge. And everyone that has died in Christ, ultimately, comes back to life and literally comes out of their tombs and goes into the city. Like great-grandma comes and visits. Are you with me? Why? Because Jesus, when he steps into death itself, it doesn't capture him. All those who are connected to him, touching him, so to speak, come back from this thing. And here's what I want to give you guys. Our resurrected Jesus today is pulsing with power. You will be raised, and it will be full of great hope. Great hope. I don't have time to go into it much further, but this is the application that I want to give you guys. When it comes to these kinds of things, we do not purify ourselves. We just go after Jesus. We just go after Jesus, right? When the woman, 12 years, she couldn't do it. She couldn't fix herself. What did she do? She just went after Jesus, and when she's with him, she's made well. Second thing I want you to know is this. The resurrected Jesus does ordinary things. This Jesus that steps into death, literally all the people come back from in the tombs, come back from the dead and start walking into town and visiting with people. He comes back. Jesus comes back after 3 days, has the keys to death and hell and the grave. And do you know what it says in his resurrection accounts? We have very little written on it in Scripture. There is not a single miracle done other than travel miracles. He walks through walls. He appears and disappears. No one gets healed. No one gets raised from the dead. No one gets delivered. We don't see any of it. What does he do? He walks on a road with two guys for miles, hours probably. He eats meals. He reminds people who they are. This pulsing with power Jesus just rose from the dead. It's the most significant event in the history of everything made, created. And he comes back and just eats fish, rebukes his followers for being lacking faith. I would do other stuff. I would not walk to Emmaus with these guys. I'd be like, like, you know what I mean? Like, he is pulsing with power. So I just want you to know this. If you feel like your life is ordinary or you're like, I'm just living, keep running after Jesus because Jesus does ordinary things. The pulsing with power, resurrected Jesus does ordinary things. The last thing that I'll say is this. We follow a God of resurrection hope. And my question is, are there things you need Jesus to touch with his resurrection power? I'm talking about the stuff that is impossible, like the stuff where it's dead. Like it's the end, right? Like it's over. It's dead. The only one that can touch that with any sort of help is our Jesus. And so as we take communion today, I think what I want to leave you guys with is this. Go after Jesus. You don't have to purify yourself. We just have to get near him, and he does the work. He does the work. And if there are things in your heart, in your life right now where you're like, I need Jesus to touch my life, my relationships, my work, my heart with resurrection power, then as we take communion, I just want to encourage you, this is church. You can get prayer from people. I'd love to pray for you. I'd love to we'll just go after Jesus together and say, Jesus, like resurrected Jesus, pulsing with power, would you come and meet me in this place? Would you come and bring resurrection to things that it's impossible for me to do without you? I'm stuck. So that's what I want to leave you guys with today. I'm so grateful for Hope Church. And I just want you guys to know that in the midst of like all the chaos, I know, guys, like I know the world is raging. And we feel all of it. We're like, the politics, the economy, the global climate of things. The global climate all by itself. There's all these things that we're going, oh man, what is happening and where do I tread and how do I don't know what to do. I want you to know this. We serve a God of resurrection, and your hope should be deeply rooted and grounded in that. He can take the most dead thing and hit it with resurrection power. So Lord, I just want to thank you for this community, for this church, for this family. And I ask that, Jesus, you would visit each one of us with your resurrection power. I know in my own life, just feeling like it's a lot. Like anxiety knocks on the door and goes, hey, everything's falling apart. And I'm just trying to hold it together sometimes. And I just am aware that I'm in need of you. And so we ask, as a family here, resurrected Jesus, would you come be near to us? We know that you've made a way through what you did on the cross for us to boldly draw near to the throne of grace, the throne of power. And so we choose to. We come to that and say, you're the only hope that we have, and it is not little. It is a great hope. We thank you for that, Lord. We thank you for your hope. We thank you for your power. We thank you for your great love for us. In Jesus' name.